Welcome to Municipal Affairs. On today's edition of the show, we're taking you to the nation's capital, Ottawa, where a delegation of Saskatchewan municipal leaders recently gathered to speak with one unified voice on behalf of Saskatchewan cities, towns, and rural municipalities. From October 1st to October 2nd, representatives from across Saskatchewan, including mayors of Regina, Saskatoon, Moose Jaw, Prince Albert, Swift Current, North Battleford, and Yorkton, joined forces with the Saskatchewan Urban Municipalities Association, or SUMA, as well as leadership from SARM, and provincial ministers Eric Schmalz and Ken Cheveldayoff. Together, they brought Saskatchewan's unique needs directly to their federal counterparts. Over the 2 busy days, the delegation met with several key federal figures, including Secretary of State and local Saskatchewan MP Buckley Belanger, Housing and Infrastructure Minister Gregor Robertson, and Minister of Prairies Economic Development Eleanor Olszewski. Conversations also included members of the Saskatchewan Conservative Caucus, provincial senators, and senior staff from the Ministry of Finance and Small Businesses and Tourism. Now, at the heart of all these discussions was one central theme: the future of infrastructure funding. With the Investing in Canada infrastructure program nearing its end, Saskatchewan leaders are calling for a new permanent infrastructure program, one that provides long-term, predictable, and sustainable federal support. Such a program would give communities the stability they need to plan effectively, manage assets responsibly, and continue building strong, resilient communities across the province. Now, in today's show, we will be joined by Swift Current Mayor Al Bridle, who was part of that delegation. He'll share insights from the meetings, the key message delivered to Ottawa, and what comes next for Saskatchewan's municipalities. Stay with us as Municipal Affairs starts now. Mayor, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about your most recent travels alongside other mayors from across the province of Saskatchewan to beautiful, the nation's capital of Ottawa. There you were meeting with ministers, senators, and also the Saskatchewan Caucus. But I've got to start with what brought you, specifically the mayor of Swift Current, to Ottawa as part of this delegation.
Uh, uh, Long story. We'll make it quick. The city of Swift Current, our swimming pool, our indoor swimming pool, is 43 years old. It's wore out. We've had to put some significant money in just to kind of cripple it along for the next few years, and we're looking to build around approximately about a $50 million indoor pool for Swift Current. And so 4 or 5 months ago, I met with Minister Schmalz from Saskatchewan. I had a one-on-one with him, and I'd given him a couple options because the old federal funding, I believe it was called ISIP, is no longer available. And at that time, shortly after that meeting, Minister Schmalz had asked if I would want to go to Ottawa on this delegation with him and Minister Cheveldayoff and represent to our leaders in Ottawa what we're looking for infrastructure funding. So that's kind of the short version.
The short version is great, but let's play into the short version and get into a little bit more detail. Now, the ISIP program is a program that has ran out, and I think it's running out at the end of this year or it's running out next year. I'm not 100% sure on the official logistics, but what would it mean for a municipality like Swift Current if that program was to officially cease to exist, and then municipalities would be left holding the bags on these big infrastructure projects like a pool?
I mean, we would be. I mean, we're a pool, but I mean, when you talk to the mayor of Yorkton, they need a sewage treatment plant. Moose Jaw needs a great big lift station. Saskatoon and Regina have huge projects. And this ISIP program, I believe it runs out at the next, I think it's still got 2 years left, but all the funding is gone for it. So it's all been allocated. So it's basically, it's going to run out, but there's no money to get. So they have a new program. I believe it's called CHIP. All these acronyms, I believe, but it's basically a housing program. And Swift Current, we don't have housing problem in Swift Current like many of the big cities, and many, not just big, but big and small cities across the country. We do not have that issue here. And even if we did, we would get this money for housing, But I mean, even if you build a bunch of houses, you still have to put streets in, and you need sewer and water and that infrastructure stuff. And the recreational part of this is, if you're going to live in a city, no matter what city it is, you want to be able to go to soccer fields and baseball fields, and you want to go swimming indoors and go to an ice rink, and all of us cities, we provide all this recreational facilities, and it's not just for our city is 17,000. It's not just for 17,000. It's for all the people around us. And we don't have a huge treating area, but anywhere from, you might say, from 40 to 70,000, depends how far out you go with other people. But for sure, there's 40,000 people around us that would use this facility. So when we're looking for money from the federal and the provincial government, we're saying, listen, as a municipality, we're willing to put up a third, and we believe we should, but we're providing these services for other people around us. And these other governments, they don't have money to give us, these other municipal governments. And so we're asking, so it's a huge thing. It really is. And without this funding from senior levels of government, I don't know how we can afford to do it here in Swift Current.
Now, in a previous interview that you gave with, I believe, with one of the local media in Swift Current, you said that you were hopeful, and I'm paraphrasing here, that the minister in charge of ISIP, who is Gregor Robertson, the Minister of Infrastructure and Housing federally, would hear you, and they were willing to have these conversations. Did you get a sense leaving Ottawa that the ministers that you spoke with, particularly Minister Robertson, heard the concerns of Saskatchewan's mayors and heard the concerns of you when talking about a predictable infrastructure program for municipalities?
I really did get that sense from both him, Minister Secretary of State Buckley, Belanger, from our only MP, Liberal MP from Saskatchewan. We met with him. We met with an MP from Edmonton. She is the Honorable, I'm just trying to get her name right because I mess it up here. I'm sorry, but Honorable Eleanor Olszewski, I believe is how you say her name. And from all these ministers, they all said, they all heard us. They asked us questions. They all said they would represent our needs to Cabinet, all of them, and especially the Honorable Robertson there. He was the mayor of Vancouver for 10 years, and he understands how important infrastructure money is for these things. And he definitely heard us. He told us, he was honest. He said, there is no money in this fall's budget for this. I mean, he didn't pull any punches there, but he was straightforward to us. But he said that he would be working in Cabinet and by himself and then through Cabinet to see if they could put a program in, to work towards a program like I Sit Back. And I know the federal government with Prime Minister Carney, I know this housing is a huge, huge priority. But I mean, in Canada, we're so diverse. Not everybody falls under one program. We just don't. And this housing, yes, there's huge problems in Toronto and Vancouver, but like Toronto housing, I mean, if you watch the news at all, their prices are falling through the floor. The condos, I mean, they're down in condo sales like 50, 60%. I think it's going to correct itself in some of these places, but the federal government has this program out, and that's where Prime Minister Carney is right now. He is focused, and I think we'll see how this next year goes. And I really believe that all the ministers heard us. We didn't just talk to ministers. Sometimes we talked to their staff, somebody in finance, a young man in finance, and they all heard us, and they all listened to each one of us mayors talk about our projects. And one of the interesting things that one of the ministers had said is, when we came with Saskatchewan has said they'll put up a third of the costs. We said we'll put up a third, and we've asked the federal government to put up a third of the costs. And one of the ministers had said that there's many other provinces just come with their hand out, and they don't come with money. And I mean, and so, I mean, in Saskatchewan, in Swift Current in particular, but we're all used to just doing stuff ourselves. I mean, we just are. We've done in Swift Current. If you come to Swift Current, Chris, I know you've been here, but I mean, you look around our city, it's not a huge city, but we've taken care of our infrastructure as much as we can. And when I say we, I don't mean me. I mean the city going back 50, 60 years. And whether it's sewer and water and our wastewater treatment plant, our water treatment plant, our recreational facilities. They're not all new, but like our ice rink, our main, the iPlex, it was built in 67. It's had major renovations on it, and we have spent money on that. And it's, I mean, we have the Broncos here, you know, the smallest city with a WHL franchise, and but they're here, and we're very proud of them. And I just got to do the Bronco hunt. Hey, you got to understand that. But the building itself, we have spent money on the building. And we've actually had some grants from senior levels of government to help that. But what we've done is we've maintained what we have, and now we have this one project that just seems just a little bit out of our reach for right now.
So I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask the political question to follow
Yes.
up that statement. And I apologize, but I'm going to say it respectfully, as respectfully as possible. Why start a project that you don't know where the money is coming from? Because that is what a lot of people will be asking themselves. If you don't know, the federal government will come to the table with a 30% of the funding, or 33.3% of the funding. Why start a project that you don't know where the money is coming from? Because the people would be left in the idea that maybe the municipality isn't sure of what the future looks like, and maybe we're never going to see this project and it's just a pipe dream.
Well, we haven't started the project, but it's a project we require. And so for anything, even in politics, if you need something, you have to plan for it. And some of the things we've done in our planning, and our planning maybe came a little late, but this year we put $140 infrastructure fee on every house and business in the city. And this will create about $1.2 million in revenue. And it's going to be set aside in a fund to build things like pools and rec facilities. And this equates to a little over a 5% tax increase on average if you just use that 140 across the board, because we generate a little over 20 million. We're going to get 1.2 from this, like 20 million in taxes, 21 million in taxes. So it's roughly about a 5% tax increase. So we have said as a council, we need to do something. And in the past, council has talked about it, but never done it. This time we've done it. And the other thing that's happened in our community, we have this foundation, the Southwest Facilities Foundation. And they've raised right around $5 million in it's not cash in hand, but promises from people to pay people and some of the RMs around us. I know the RM of Swift Current, the RM of Excelsior. They put up money. We've had some big commitments from all sorts of businesses, and small commitments, big commitments. And so there's around $5 million to put towards this over a 10-year period. And so our community is saying, we're invested in this. And I mean, if this doesn't go with this infrastructure funding with the federal government and the province, I know that we'll be having more talks with the province. And I know I've already given Minister Schmalz a couple of other ideas for financing for our project. I'm not going to mention them here, but I know he likes the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 better than the suggestions I gave him. But it's still, hey, it's still, we can still have those discussions. So this pool, we're not building it until we have the funding committed. But if it doesn't come this way, we're going to find another way to find this funding.
So I want to turn back to Ottawa for a second, because there's a question that I've wanted to ask you, and I'm going to try and word this in the way that I need to. Out of the three ministers, and when I say ministers, I mean Minister and Secretary of State, Buckley Belanger, two of the people, federal cabinet ministers that you met with, are former mayors themselves. Buckley, who was the former mayor of Isle Lacrosse, and Gregor Robertson, who was the former mayor, as you said, of Vancouver. Did they ask the right questions? As former mayors themselves, and speaking to mayors who were around the table, were they asking the questions that you wanted them to ask you about this funding and around these infrastructure projects? Because they have lived experiences knowing the infrastructure challenges that municipalities face. So when you were speaking to them, were they asking the right questions to get to the heart of the issues that you were addressing? Not only you, but your fellow mayors as well.
Yes, they were. And both those, because, I mean, being mayors in the past, that gives them an advantage. I mean, because they understand how important this is. They were asking the right questions, and also the other minister, the one from Edmonton, she's the minister responsible for emergency preparedness, I believe is her. And she's a brand new minister, but you know what? She also asked the right questions. She really did. And the interesting thing about her, when I said I was, Mayor of Swift Current, she says, "Oh, I was born there, back a long time ago." And then she grew up in Medicine Hat, and so we have that connection. But just the idea. So all the ministers and even the other two ministers, like the finance that we talked to, just the admin staff, or I shouldn't say just admin staff. I don't mean it like that, but and then the other one was. Minister Valdez. She's a Filipino minister from
Tourism.
Tourism, yes, tourism, and her staff. They had quite a few questions, but yeah, the ministers themselves, and both the ones like Buckley Belanger, definitely. I mean, he did Isle Lacrosse for I think 6 years before he became MLA for 26 years, and then did when he lost the federal election like 4 years ago, he was mayor of Isle Lacrosse again for a year. But he definitely asked the right questions. And we walked into his setting, and there were Saskatchewan flags all over. And he's a proud Saskatchewan man. And first time I'd met him, I got quite a kick out of him. But Minister Robertson definitely asked the correct questions. He really did. And he would go, and I mean, like Saskatoon and Regina, their infrastructure projects are substantially bigger. But I know the mayor of Saskatoon wasn't with us, but her councillor, Zach Jeffries, was there. And he really tied in their needs and all our needs to what Prime Minister Carney is trying to do in the country right now, he tied it into housing, but he also tied it into growing trade between provinces, and he tied it in really, really well. And then the mayor of Regina, he was very, very good also. Yeah. I thought everybody did a great job, and then we also had Bill Huber there from SARM, and he talked about like rural municipalities infrastructure needs. Mainly, I mean, bridges is one of the big things, but he tied that in very well and talked about how the fact that they need infrastructure in the cities and towns around them for their arms to exist, and we need them. And so no, it was really, really good.
While there, you also didn't just meet with the federal government, but you also met with the Saskatchewan Caucus, which is made up of, I believe, 13 of 14 members, and that is of the Conservative Party of Canada, the opposition. What was the conversations with the Saskatchewan Caucus like federally?
It was okay. I mean, their biggest problem is they're not in government. I mean, and they are. I mean, we have myself and even the two ministers from Saskatchewan are there. I mean, we are in power and we get to make these choices where they're in opposition. But the meeting went well. It was I think there's Senator Batters, I believe, was with them, and the meeting went well. And afterwards, there was a little bit of, there's always talk back and forth, but we had a social function that night, and I talked to many of the Saskatchewan ministers, and they assured, or not ministers, the MPs, and they assured us that they'll be doing everything they can. But with being in opposition, they don't have quite the same pull, shall we say, and you know what? I'll be honest. I was very impressed with. We're from Saskatchewan. We're pretty conservative. We are. And yet we got great respect from all the Liberal ministers and their staff. We really did, and I was very impressed with that.
Was it worth your time and Swift Current for sending you on this mission to Ottawa to advocate on these issues? Because you openly admitted, Minister Robertson said that there's probably going to be no funding for this. Was this a smart move for Swift Current to be in these meetings?
Minister Robertson said there'd be no funding for this fall. He'd work on it for next year. So, you know what? When whether it's in our personal lives or politics or friends, you need to build relationships before. Relationships matter, and I believe for myself, and I think for the other mayors and the councillor from Saskatoon, and even the ministers from Saskatchewan, I believe the relationships were being built. And I know that I'm not a huge guy to go to all these FCM meetings, but I know next year FCM is in Edmonton, and I know I am going, because guaranteed a couple of those ministers, federal ministers, are going to be there, and I want to make the contact again. And they've all said they'll stay in touch via email. I've already sent emails off. Their staff have replied. A couple of the ministers have replied. And so I think when you just walk up to a stranger on the street and said, give me $1,000, we'll invest in a business. That's not going to work. You walk up to a stranger in the street, you become friends with them, and you sit down and you say, you know what, we could open up a little sandwich shop up on the corner, and you start. You need relationships. And I know that sounds, people say, oh, that's too simple. It isn't. Relationships matter, and relationships matter between, they just do. And so I really think it was worth my time and worth all of our time. And I really appreciate our Minister Schmalz and his staff for putting this together, and the province for saying, because Minister Schmalz has a really good relationship with the Honorable Robertson there. He really does. They met at some other function they were at, or not function, but another conference a few months back, and they'd had a good talk in the back of an Uber, and that's where I think, and he told me that's kind of where this came about, even this thing, because Minister Robertson suggested that he do something about it, and so he did. So
to be a fly on that in that Uber conversation, I can just imagine how that went over.
I would, yeah. And there you could see the relationship when we're in the meeting. I always watch people, and you could see the relationship. One more thing I want to say before I leave too. We met with four of the Saskatchewan senators, 2 in person and 2 on Zoom, and that meeting went really well. And it was an interesting meeting. We're in just a kind of a conference room, and they all and there was a couple of conservative senators there, and there's some independent, which you can say independent, but they're liberals. Let's be honest, right? But they all supported, and they heard us, and they asked us questions, and some difficult questions which different members around the table answered, and they all said at the end that they will definitely do what they can to support Saskatchewan infrastructure needs.
So my final question before I do let you go, and this is the one that you kind of just spoke to a little bit, but what's the one thing you want the people of Swift Current to know about what you heard in Ottawa that we have not talked about in this conversation so far, that you want to make sure people know about why you were there?
I think I've already said it, but we need to build relationships with people and other levels of government. If we have no relationship, nothing will happen. And some people will tell me, you wasted $3,500, because that's what it was, basically between the hotel and the flights. That's what it costs. And the meals, I eat here, I eat there. People say that's silly, but no, I'm going to eat at home or eat there. It doesn't matter to me. But the airport, the flights and the flights, and you know what? And maybe it's likely closer to 3,000 by the time everything. But it's not 3,000 wasted, because it was $3,000 invested in relationships. And we have a Liberal government in Canada with Prime Minister Carney at its helm. Our MPs, we have one Liberal MP in Saskatchewan, and the rest of them are Conservatives. And the Liberal cabinet members know that. But they still, all the ones we spoke to, still engaged with us and didn't act like we were the enemy. They engaged with us as we were just citizens like anybody else.
Also in attendance at that gathering in Ottawa was Yorkton City Mayor Aaron Keenley. Now, we spoke with Mayor Keenley about why it was important for Yorkton's voice to be in Ottawa during these all-important infrastructure conversations. Mayor Keenley, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about your most recent travels to Ottawa alongside representatives of SUMA, fellow mayors and municipal leaders from across the province, and members of SARM and provincial ministers. Why was it important for Yorkton's mayor to be in this delegation to Ottawa?
Well, I think one of the things, Chris, is advocacy. We talk so much about it, like here at the city, and I think around all municipalities. But what exactly is that? How exactly do you do that? And for me, as a new mayor, a little bit concerned, because I love building relationships, but I want to do it strategically. I also want to talk to the right people about the right issues. So it started honestly with getting to know Minister Schmalz a little bit, and then also listening to the needs of my community, which at the very top is infrastructure dollars. And so then one of the main projects, which in our case is a wastewater treatment facility, listening to, again, the directors and the city manager and being like, this is a need and we can't do it on our own. So starting that advocacy work with the provincial government, Minister of Government Relations, getting a letter into him, being able to go and meet with him at the legislature, have those meetings, and then understand that, we obviously also need the federal support. And how can we do that? So while trying to navigate that, I'm really thankful to the province for putting this trip together, for bringing us all together as you said, municipal leaders and mayors, and heading to Ottawa to kind of take our concerns individually of our cities, but putting it all together and saying, hey, here's what municipalities in Saskatchewan need, and chances are municipalities across Canada need.
Did you hear what you wanted to hear in Ottawa, or did you come back to Yorkton thinking, okay, it's a good first step, but there's a lot more work to be done?
It's a good first step. I think for sure it was highlighted by a number of people, including, the Minister of Housing and Infrastructure, how valuable advocacy work is from municipalities to the federal government, and how Saskatchewan and a couple other provinces have been identified as kind of like lacking in that space. So I think that was good. Also getting some clarity around, you're probably not going to see a new infrastructure program in the fall budget, but potentially in the spring, and potentially with more good work. It's understood that we need something that's more broad, more flexible, more closely aligned or similar to ISIP funding, maybe versus the CHIF funding that's available now that's really tied to housing. So I came back, to be honest, very thankful that I was a part of this and given the opportunity, and also encouraged that I think we identified the need to the right people, and I think there will be work done on this. So overall, I think it was very good.
Wastewater treatment facilities have a hefty price tag to them, and I can imagine you want to start a wastewater treatment facility 5 years ago rather than 5 months from now, because things are only getting more expensive. Is Yorkton in a place right now where you are comfortable with the current status of your infrastructure, and this is a more proactive approach to say we need this to come down the line? Or are you at capacity where you need to say, okay, if we don't fix it tomorrow, we're going to be up creek without a paddle?
Yeah, I mean, I can spin it where we need to do it now for the future. It's about future infrastructure and future growth. I can explain that and how it spins off into economic development and all those things. But the fact of the matter is that we are in non-compliance today. We are nearing capacity today. We have a expansion on one of our crush plant facilities, canola crush plant facilities, that's coming online in 26 that will take us right to capacity. So whether it's housing, we couldn't take on maybe another subdivision, or whether it's another agriculture business comes to town and we simply have to turn them down because we're at capacity. All those things are true. And so the need for funding as soon as possible. And you mentioned 5 years ago, when I was on council between 16 and 20, we started talking about this. It was identified back then, so that's almost 10 years ago. And the price tag that we were looking at was around $80 million. And we're at 30% design now, and that price tag has tripled. And when you look at, the ones that are really in the news, like maybe Vancouver's wastewater treatment plant, I mean, hundreds of millions to now $1 billion. And pricing doesn't make sense. That's not lost on me. This is ludicrous. But it's the reality that we find ourselves in. And so one of the things I've tried to talk to, whether it's the province or the federal government, and the people that we were able to speak to about it, is, this isn't going away. So if it can't happen now, okay. I mean, I like a bit of transparency. Tell me it can't happen now, but know that I'm going to be transparent back and say, like, I'll see you next year, and I'll see you the year after that, and I'll see you the year after that. And the price tag's not going to get smaller. Right now, we're at a place with kind of looking at past ISIP funding. We know the funding model, and we feel we can contribute our share right now. But in a couple of years, we don't know what pricing is going to look like. And there's a very real chance that we're going to be going to the province or the federal government and saying, like, hey, we told you guys. And now it's actually impossible for us to put our share in because it's so massive, right?
So how do you start that walk right now? Because we're recording this at the beginning of October, and this is traditionally the time when the actual conversations around 2026, 27 operating and capital budget start to take place, unless you're on a 4-year cycle. But this is the point in time when you start getting those budget binders, and every municipal council goes, "Yay, it's exciting times where we get to be stuck with our council colleagues for a weekend." Do you need to have a serious conversation this year about, do we take the chance and start the project now, or do we wait till the federal government comes to the table with the provincial government and all three of us can afford this? Because if you don't do it now, that $130 million or $80 million or whatever, it's going to be 200 million one day. And I can imagine that's going to be a very hefty tax increase for your
Yeah.
residents if you have to do that.
I mean, in the conversations I've had, and just like for clarity, 80 million was our back in 2016, 2017 number. So we're at over $200 million. And this is again at 30% design. We know at this point we can't do it on our own. To the point that, we've applied for CHIF funding, but if CHIF funding isn't stackable, if there isn't something else, we can't even start with that amount of money because we're going to end up with a partially built, structure that has no promise of completion necessarily. So we are a bit, stuck sitting on our hands a little bit and going to continue the work. Don't get me wrong. Whether it's planning, we've been having to spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars annually on repairs to our current system. There's going to be work that just continues to happen. And on my end, the advocacy work is going to continue to happen. I think we saw on this trip, the 7 mayors come together and really work together. And it was really something to see. The provincial government supported us well in these meetings. And my intention is to come to SUMA Mayor's Caucus, or to the City Mayor's Caucus, and to have some real discussions about continued advocacy. I think that, it was identified as a need. So now how do we do that? Because we need these things to happen in a more timely fashion.
No, I had the pleasure to sit down with Al Bridle of Swift Current, the mayor there, for this exact same episode. And I talked to him about if he felt like the ministers, the two of the three ministers, infrastructure and housing, Gregor Robertson and Buckley Belanger, Secretary of State for Rural Communities, both former mayors themselves. Were they speaking municipal language to the municipal leaders in the room, or were they talking federal infrastructure challenges themselves?
I mean, I think there was a desire to not overpromise and leave yourself in a spot where you're going to underdeliver. But I felt that both of them were very understanding. Specifically, Minister Robertson, like he knows, you can still see his mayor's hat is still half on, and he understands the difficulty that municipalities have, the need for infrastructure funding, the need for help from other levels of government on all kinds of different topics. So I thought both those meetings in particular, we were very well received. Secretary Belanger is a champion for Saskatchewan. I think it was evident in not only the words he said, but the moments I got to speak with his staff. I think that's very real, and we need that. Obviously, with our one member of parliament that's in government and from Saskatchewan, it's incredibly important. And Minister Robertson, he was one of the ones that flat out told us, like, you're not going to see something in the spring or in the fall, but there's a possibility in the spring. And I'm going to take this. I'm going to talk to other ministers, MPs, senators that you've spoken with on your trip here. And I'm going to try to compile all that information and the need. And we highlighted that the ISIP framework was pretty darn good. And so if that could be renewed or built upon, you don't necessarily need to start from scratch, which could be, rather time consuming. And so I'm hoping that some of those things will stick, and be something that they kind of look back on and be like, okay, we do have some good ideas here that were brought to the table.
So what do you do now? You're back in Yorkton as we're talking, and these conversations can't end. Advocacy is great, but every municipal leader I've ever chatted with, even yourself, advocacy is great, but action is so much better. What is the action that you want to see from the federal government and even the provincial government after this 2-day conference, not conference, but 2-day advocacy workshop that you had in Ottawa?
Yeah, well, I mean, action obviously is what we need. And so I think on our part, it's reaching out to one another and to start kind of building a little bit of a strategy, but also reaching out to the provincial government and saying, hey, okay, so you've come to the table with a third. We both know that's like great, but we need the federal government. So whatever levers can be pulled and whatever conversations can be continued. And then also with the federal ministers and members of parliament that we spoke to, I think it's on us as a group to also reach out to all of them and thank them for their time and appreciate that they gave us that space to talk about our needs. But now, yeah, we're going to watch the fall budget come down, and we're going to be back in your inbox later or on the telephone, and we need to see action because it's they're projects that just aren't going away, and in some cases they're only going to grow more dire. So it's tough, and I mean not even like listening to myself talk there, it still sounds like we're just going to be talking and we're just going to be doing this advocacy work, but you don't want to fall off the radar. And so whatever it takes to keep yourself, your project, your city on the radar is really important work. So yeah, that's going to be it. And like I said, I'm gonna really discuss this more at City Mayor's Caucus and hope that SUMA and our group can kind of work towards advancing whatever those action items are that we're going to need to work on here in the coming weeks.
So, with representatives from Prince Albert, Swift Current, Yorkton, North Battleford, Regina, Saskatoon, just to name a few, Moose Jaw, you all have different infrastructure challenges that your individual municipalities are facing. Now, a collective voice is great, but at the end of the day, you're there representing the people of Yorkton and you want the money for yourself. Great that Moose Jaw can get some, but you want yours. How important was it for you all to speak from that infrastructure collaborative notebook, but still at the end of the day, be pushing a little bit harder for your own individual community?
Yeah, I mean, and there were different things, right? There was an emphasis on recreation, and don't get me wrong, we've recently spent millions of dollars over the last few years on recreational infrastructure. So yeah, there's times where you're like, I'd like to pin one of the other mayors in the corner and take the puck and go and score the goal, right? But I think that collectively, especially when you're looking at wanting a federal program, the only way to do it is collectively.
Yeah.
For somebody in Ottawa to write off a one-off check to Yorkton is probably not realistic. So coming together as a group, and even I think having the language that says, hey, like we're representing Saskatchewan, we're representing our individual cities, but this is good for Canada because that's what they're tasked with. So yeah, I mean, I'd love a couple of the mayors to just call up Ottawa and say, we'll drop out if you'll give Keenly and Yorkton their wastewater treatment plant. That'd be great. I don't know if it's realistic, but I think working together is really important. I think that if I went to Ottawa as a one-off mayor from a small city in Saskatchewan and said, we really need this, I don't know that it would have the effect of the group of us saying, hey, we all have needs in this same space. And we're backed with the provincial government saying that they're willing to bring their portion to the table already. I think of the work that we do in council here. And if you have a group that comes and says, we have this massive need and it's this massive amount of money, please provide it for us. And then you have another group that shows up and they have multiple groups in their group and they're all working together collaboratively. And they say, hey, we've come up with a portion of the funding and we're going to fundraise for another portion of the funding, but we'd like you to commit to this. When you're looking at those two different things, it's pretty clear what a council is going to choose. And so I try to think of how I would react and how I would, treat the situation, and then try to best put myself in their shoes and think, well, it's probably similar to the decisions that they're having to make.
Now, you heard from Minister Robertson himself saying that it's not probably going to be in the fall budget, but we'll look at it in the spring budget. Now, hypothetical question here, and this is my last one for you, Mayor Keenly, is if the federal government happens to wake up on November 4th and say, you know what, we do need to invest in infrastructure, and we are going to give the ask to the Saskatchewan mayors that came and advocated. Is Yorkton shovel ready to ensure that if they decide that they're going to actually invest, you can get started on this project on November 5th?
That's the plan. The thought was that we had previously applied twice for ISEP funding, and our project was way, early and barely in the planning stage and those types of things. And we feel like that was a bit what held us back. And, to get to 30% the study done and the planning work done, it's a couple $1 million. So we've invested that. We have corporate partners in our city that have these large agribusiness facilities. We've tasked them with installing and building pre-treatment plants. So they have water treatment plants. They've invested nearly $20 million into literally keeping us at a sustainable place with our wastewater. So like a lot of the different things have been done. And so we're in a place now where, yeah, we're ready to go. We're hopeful that, it'll happen soon. We have to be ready. I don't think we have an option to be where we were 5 years ago and just hoping the money will eventually come. And once it comes, then we'll get ready. So we are shovel ready. It sounds like many of the projects in the province are kind of at that same stage. And so now it's just a matter of having a program or having them show up, like you said, with funding.
From the smallest villages to the largest cities, every day your urban municipality supports you. The water that travels from tap to sewer, the emergency services that keep you safe, the parks, libraries, and rinks that you enjoy. Our cities, towns, villages, resort villages, and northern municipalities are urban hubs bringing people together. We are urban. Celebrate your municipality as part of the urban family.
We also caught up with Don Kilmer, councillor for the city of Prince Albert, but also Vice President of Cities for the Saskatchewan Urban Municipalities Association, about what she heard while in Ottawa. Councillor, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about your most recent travels alongside mayors from across Saskatchewan to Ottawa. You were there representing the Saskatchewan Urban Municipalities Association in your role as VP of Cities Caucus. Gotta ask a very simple question. What was the purpose of your attendance in Ottawa last week?
Well, the role that I played was to be the voice for the urban municipalities of Saskatchewan, which are numerous, the towns, the villages, the northern communities. So I was the voice of many.
One of the big things that I know was talked about last week in Ottawa, or when you were in Ottawa on October 1st and 2nd, was the issue around infrastructure. What were you looking to hear from your federal counterparts, whether it be the Minister Belanger of Saskatchewan, Minister Robertson, the Housing and Infrastructure Minister, or Minister of Western Economic Development? I'm going to pronounce her name wrong, and I apologize. Eleanor Olszewski. I apologize if I pronounced that wrong. But what were you hoping to hear from the ministers when meeting with them?
Well, the number one priority is that in Saskatchewan, the ISIP program that currently is funded is fully subscribed. And we are in dire need of investment, continuing long-term sustainable investment in the program such as ISIP. And so our message was simple. We require this. We would like it to be broad as possible and flexible as possible. And that, our economy in Saskatchewan relies on our strong infrastructure projects.
Now, put that into context for me, because infrastructure is a very wide-ranging challenge that municipalities are facing. For yourself, as a councillor for the great city of Prince Albert, what does infrastructure funding from the federal government mean or not mean if you don't have those grants in place to help municipalities out?
Well, the key piece is just the enormity of the cost of infrastructure, whether it be core, water, sewer, roads, the things that all municipalities are in charge of, as well as life-enhancing infrastructures, arenas, parks, libraries, those types of infrastructure. We as the different sizes of municipalities, regardless if you're the 25 or the 320,000 population, the cost bearing of whatever infrastructure that you are trying to do to enhance your area and your catchment area is important to that council or mayor. So what we were trying to make sure that people understood is that the message from the provincial government, which is please put it back in place once it runs out, it's fully subscribed, that the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 funding and flexibility would enhance our municipalities greatly in our province.
Councillor, municipalities are on the front lines of a lot of the issues that are happening in the province, in the federal government, in the federation right now. Why is it important for municipalities to get funded adequately when it comes to infrastructure?
Well, municipalities bear the brunt of 60% of the infrastructure costs across Canada and in Saskatchewan, yet we have the least amount of fiscal capacity to raise funds for that infrastructure. So it is critical that we are at the table discussing our needs and putting together what we need and why we need it.
Do you feel like you were heard from any of the ministers while there? Because out of the 3 cabinet ministers you met, Secretary of State Belanger, Minister Robertson, and Minister Olszewski, 2 of those ministers happen to be former mayors themselves. One of
That's
Vancouver,
right.
one of Isle La Crosse in your neck of the woods. Did you
Absolutely.
feel like you were heard by the former mayors?
Yes, I really did. I felt what I walked away with the feeling was how fortunate I am to be part of this delegation and that all of us involved have the same goals in mind. It's just the how, right? So SUMA, SARM, the mayors from the 6 cities, 7 cities that were there, the municipalities that I hear from as in my role with SUMA, we all want what's best for all of our residents collectively, and that we are willing to work together to do it. I felt that message was heard loud and clear by those mayors. They acknowledged that it is tough work and that is part of their goals as well.
The ministers, I'm assuming you met, right?
The
Because
ministers, sorry, the ministers.
Former mayors.
Former mayors. Yes.
I want to, though, pick up on something that I've chatted with 2 mayors who were part of that delegation, Swift current mayor Al Bridle and Yorkton mayor. And the one thing I heard a few times was while they heard you, there was no promises made that this budget
Correct.
that's going to be coming out in less than a month time will have anything to help the ISIP program to continue on. While it's not a good sign that it's not going to be in the budget, there was some talk about potentially next budget. Are you optimistic?
I am optimistic. I heard exactly the same message. That here is what we have promised. Here is what we're working on. Here is the message from the federal government, and we have these priorities in place currently. And we are thankful that you've come. We hear you, and we will bring this work into our next budget discussions. So is that a promise? No. Did they hear us? I really do think so. And I think the thing that I learned from this is that we need to continue talking through our MLAs and our MPs, and each other, to help guide all of us in making good decisions based on the taxation that we have. We need infrastructure.
You openly talked about that. The 3 partners, the 3 Ps, the 3 levels of government coming to the table around infrastructure. Now, this delegation was not just mayors, it was also the Minister of Government Relations, Eric Schmalz, one of the local MLAs around Prince Albert, but also Minister Ken Cheveldayoff. For
Mhm.
yourself, what was it like to have the provincial government at the same table with the federal government and have all three levels of government trying to work out this issue around infrastructure challenges?
It felt very hopeful, in my opinion. I really appreciated the message that came from both the ministers, and they both repeatedly talked about, they have been sent by Scott Moe to, deliver this message. So they were the ones that said, ISIP has been fully subscribed. They are the ones that said it has done this amount of work and investment over the past, I think, 7-8 years that it's currently, and running out in 2 years. That it has been a well-received investment, and that Saskatchewan doesn't take that lightly. And so I really appreciated the clear, concise message about the value that all the municipalities play, in making Saskatchewan a province that is second to none.
So where do municipalities go from here then? Because at the end of the day, while the first conversation is great, infrastructure challenges does not go away just because a conversation has happened.
Right.
You have now come back and you have now, I'm assuming, will be speaking with the SUMA board, speaking with your local council as well, and the city caucus for SUMA. What do you bring back to Saskatchewan to ensure that while the conversation has started, the
Mm-hmm.
challenges that you are faced with are not going away, and they're not going away tomorrow or the next day. They're going to be here for a while. How do you put the words into action now?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is get our data numbers, in control or in line. We need to make sure that the federal government and our provincial governments see us as a municipality doing what we can and why we need that particular funding. What are the numbers? What are the data pieces if this infrastructure comes into place? What is getting in the way, right? It's not just, oh, please give us, a third of the funding for our 100 million water treatment plant, right? No, this is what, for us to grow in the next 50 years, this is what's happening. This is what is happening here. If I use Prince Albert as an example, there's a $1 billion regional hospital being built right now, which brings with it 500 full-time jobs of professionals. So our city is growing, and we have to, our infrastructure, or the core infrastructure, has to grow with it. And we as municipalities, regardless if it's Prince Albert or the smallest area, have made decisions already based on that and put money toward, and prioritized our different infrastructures. So get your data together, get your reasoning, and keep talking, and not just by letter. Face to face is where you see the human. Face to face is where we need to be.
One of the other meetings that you did have during your meetings in Ottawa was not just with the government, but you also met with the opposition, your local MPs, the Saskatchewan
Correct?
Caucus. You met with senators. Now,
Yeah.
traditionally, oppositions don't have money to give to the municipalities or people who need it, but you need
Right.
to have those conversations, as you just said. What were
Mm-hmm.
those conversations like with the senators and the Saskatchewan caucus of the Conservative Party of Canada?
Both were very good. Randy Hoback, which is the MP for my area in particular, did receive the information and then did give us some good feedback, or gave, following the meeting, some good feedback. Um, the their role, even though the opposition is what we see maybe on question period, my experience has been that our MP has helped us navigate some pretty important pieces. So our hope my hope is the takeaway from that caucus meeting was, we will help you, we hear you, we will help you. The senators, they are always on board with Saskatchewan. They are working hard at the different committees that they can, and have been. It's been my experience that when we talk with them, they are helpful and give us very good feedback, and the data piece came from them.
So my final question before I let you go, what would you want the people of Prince Albert or Saskatchewan to know why it was important for yourself, mayors, to be in Ottawa that we have not talked about yet?
I think it's the same message that I have I feel like it's woven in, I'm hoping has been woven in, is that we are one tax base, we are one group. How the pie is divided to make us all be able to do the best and manage the best, to let our small businesses grow and function and help us build our communities is critical to what we do. So we need to be in the same boat, not always rowing the same way. It's really good to let everybody know your belief and what might serve better, because out of those discussions comes the best solution. And if I believe that locally here, I also do believe that through the levels of government.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Municipal Affairs. Now, we hope you've enjoyed today's conversation and gained some valuable insights into the world of Saskatchewan municipal politics and the world of advocacy at a federal level. Now, your support means the world to us, so if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform, or if you haven't and you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button today. Your support means the world to us, as I said, and if you can, share this episode with your friends, your family, and yes, even your community, and help keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we will be back with a brand new episode of Municipal Affairs shortly. Till then, everyone.